Morning broke like a memory, mist rising from the pasture, light spilling through frost-softened air. Clara stood by the fence, her breath curling in front of her, the boards beneath her palms rough with age. 10 winters had passed since the day the wild mare disappeared into the storm. Yet some part of her still listened for the sound of hooves. The world had gone quiet after Luna left. The silence never stopped feeling like loss. Back then, Clara had found the mare half dead by the river, a slip of light in a world gone gray. The floods had swept through the valley, and the creature lay tangled in reeds, eyes rolling white with fear. Clara had waded into the freezing current without thinking, cutting the rope that held Luna trapped. The mare had fought her at first, wild and desperate, but Clara had murmured soft words until the trembling eased. For months she nursed her in the barn, hands blistered, heart stubborn. Trust came slow, in breaths and inches. Then one morning, when the snow melted into mud, Luna broke through the fence and vanished into the hills. People said wild things never stay where kindness keeps them. Clara had nodded, pretending she understood, but something in her refused to stop looking. She would wake before dawn, scanning the horizon where fog met pine, hoping to catch a glint of movement. Nothing ever came. Seasons turned, fences sagged. The photograph of Luna, mud-streaked and defiant, faded by the hearth. Now Clara was older, her hair a threadbare silver, her voice softened by years of speaking only to animals. The rescue ranch had grown quiet. A blind mule, 2 aging geldings, and a stray dog were all that remained. Yet every morning, she still carried her coffee to the same spot by the fence, watching the light gather over the empty field. It was ritual, maybe habit, maybe hope she couldn't name. Today, the air held a stillness she couldn't quite place. Frost clung to the rails, glittering like memory. Beyond the fence, the meadow stretched pale and untouched, the kind of quiet that made sound feel like an intrusion. She took a sip from her mug, tasting the familiar bitterness. Her eyes drifted toward the far ridge, where the fog thickened in slow coils. Something stirred, faint, rhythmic, low, like a heartbeat muffled by distance. Clara frowned, holding her breath. It came again, then faded. She listened, pulse quickening, though she told herself not to be foolish. 10 years was too long. No creature, no matter how wild, remembered kindness that far back. Still, she lingered by the fence long after the coffee cooled, eyes fixed on the shifting mist. Somewhere deep in hush, the sound came again, soft, deliberate, real. Her heart leapt before reason could catch it. She set the mug down gently on the post, the steam curling upward like a prayer. The next morning unfolded in a hush so complete that even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Clara moved through the barn, the scent of hay and earth heavy in the air, her boots stirring dust that caught the light. Routine steadied her. Feed, water, check the old mule stall, but her mind kept drifting to that sound from yesterday. She dreamed of it all night. Hooves through fog, a shadow breaking the stillness. Dreams, she told herself, were cruel that way. They stitched ghosts into daylight. She stepped outside, bucket in hand. The valley was veiled in silver mist, soft and low, clinging to the fences like memory. The cold bit her cheeks, and her breath hung white as she turned toward the pasture. For a moment, she saw nothing but the rolling fog. Then movement, a dark shape, faint but solid, parting the haze like a dream made real. Her heart stuttered. She froze, eyes narrowing against the light. Out of the mist came a mare, taller now, her coat deep chestnut touched with silver around the muzzle. Every line of her body was familiar, carved into memory long ago. Clara's knees weakened. "Luna?" she whispered, the name trembling out before she could stop it. The mare halted at the fence, nostrils flaring, breath rising in pale plumes. For a heartbeat, the world held only that sound. The soft rhythm of life returned. Then another shape emerged behind her, smaller, a foal, coat pale as dawn, legs unsteady, eyes wide and unafraid. Clara's throat tightened. It was impossible and yet utterly true. She set the bucket down, her hands shaking. Luna's ears twitched at the sound. 10 years had passed, but recognition flickered in the mare's eyes. An old trust, buried deep, surfacing like light beneath ice. Clara stepped forward slowly, boots sinking into thawing earth. "It's me," she said softly, voice breaking. "You remember?" The mare didn't move, but her gaze never wavered. The foal pressed close to her flank, then peeked out curiously, head tilted. Clara knelt, lowering herself to the mare's height, hands open in quiet offering. The air between them shimmered with something sacred, fragile as breath. For a long moment, Luna stood motionless. Then, with a slow exhale, she took a step forward. The sound of her hooves on the frosted ground was the most beautiful thing Clara had ever heard. The foal followed, its tiny muzzle brushing against Clara's sleeve. Tears blurred her vision, spilling warm against the cold. "Welcome home," she whispered. The words fell into the silence and seemed to stay there, suspended, as if the land itself was listening. Luna dipped her head, almost bowing, and the gesture stole Clara's breath. She didn't understand how or why, only that some circle had quietly closed. The fog began to lift, revealing the pasture washed in gold. And for the first time in years, Clara felt the world breathe again. The days that followed felt borrowed from a dream Clara had once given up having. Each morning she rose before the light, her breath visible in the chill, to find Luna waiting by the gate in the foal. She begun calling her Dawn, dancing in the dew-wet grass. The mare was older, her ribs faint beneath the coat, yet her eyes held the same defiant fire Clara remembered. It wasn't just a return. It was a quiet claiming, as if Luna had brought her life back to where it had first been mended. Clara moved carefully, never wanting to break the fragile trust that had settled between them. She brought oats and fresh water, spoke little, and kept her gestures slow, deliberate. Dawn's curiosity bloomed each day. The young one would edge closer, nudge Clara's coat, then dart away, startled by her own courage. The mare watched, protected but calm, her body forming a wall of safety between the human and her child. By the third week, Luna followed Clara into the lower field, without a lead rope. The sight stirred something old and tender inside her, proof that even wild hearts remember kindness. At night, Clara sat by the window with her journal open, the pages filled again after years of neglect. Each entry began the same. They came back. Writing it felt like breathing, like setting something broken right. Neighbors began to stop by, word spreading quietly through the valley. Most came only to look, to see the miracle with their own eyes. A few left apples or carrots by the gate. One man whispered, "Guess she never forgot who pulled her from that river." Clara smiled faintly, but didn't answer. She didn't need to explain. Some bonds didn't require words. Winter softened its grip, the fields turning green again. The mare's strength returned, and Dawn's coat deepened from pale gold to honey. Together they grazed near the old oak, the same place Luna once learned to walk without fear. Clara often stood watching, one hand resting on the fence, thinking of the long years in between, the loneliness, the stubborn faith that something lost might still find its way home. One evening she found a rusted horseshoe half buried near the barn door. The curve was familiar, worn smooth along one edge. She brushed off the dirt and hung it by the stall entrance, where the light caught it just so. It felt like a sign, though she didn't try to name what it meant. That night, as wind sighed to the rafters, Clara leaned against the doorway and whispered to the dark, "Maybe you never left. Maybe you were just finding your way back." Luna lifted her head, ears twitching at the sound. The foal shifted beside her mother, warm breath rising into the stillness. And for the first time in 10 years, Clara no longer felt alone. A year slipped by, quiet as a breath. The valley had turned lush again, the fields heavy with grass, and the barn hummed with the rhythm of familiar life. Clara moved slower now, her hands marked by years of work, yet her spirit carried a steadiness that felt almost young. Each dawn began with the same ritual. She opened the barn door, whispered a greeting, and watched Luna and Dawn emerge into the light. The mare's coat gleamed bronze beneath the sun, and her foal, no longer small, moved with a grace that seemed born of two worlds, wild and gentle both. Clara's journal had grown thick, its pages smudged with soil and ink. She wrote less about loss now and more about gratitude, the kind that hums quietly without asking for notice. When letters arrived from her grown children, she wrote back not about loneliness, but about the mare that came home. Sometimes she wondered if they believed her, but it didn't matter. Some truths belonged to those who lived them. The circle of seasons had come around again when the storm returned. It rolled in sudden and fierce, wind clawing at the windows, rain drumming against the roof like a heartbeat gone frantic. The memory of that night 10 years ago flickered in her mind. The flood, the fear, the dark river swallowing the hills. She lit a lantern and waited by the barn door, heart steady despite the storm's rage. When dawn broke, the rain eased into mist. Beyond the fence, Luna stood beneath the oak, her body slick with rain, her mane tangled with leaves. Beside her, Dawn waited, head lifted toward the open wild beyond the valley. Clara understood before it happened. The way wild things always listen to a call no one else can hear. She opened the gate without a word. The young mare stepped forward first, hooves sinking into soft mud. Luna hesitated, her eyes finding Clara's through the curtain of rain. For a long, suspended moment, neither moved. Then Luna bowed her head once, a gesture that carried more weight than any sound. She turned and followed her foal into the pale mist, until both vanished beyond the ridge. Clara stood there long after they were gone. The lantern's flame flickered out, leaving her in the quiet hum of the waking world. She felt no ache this time, only fullness, an understanding that love doesn't end when it leaves. It becomes something that moves through the living, unseen but unbroken. Later that morning, she opened her journal and wrote the final line. The ones we save never truly leave us. They carry our kindness into the world. She closed the book and set it by the window, sunlight spilling over its cover. Outside, the pasture shimmered gold, and somewhere in the distance, the faint echo of hooves faded into peace.